The second question is, where do I get my work ethic and professionalism from? You asked for this, Ben. You asked for this. I'm going to ramble. This is going to be a rambly response. Growing up, I never thought of myself as someone with a good work ethic because I didn't like doing chores. I never did homework. I sucked at school, and my day jobs, I wasn't good at them. But when I found something that I loved doing, like music, it ceased feeling like work. It ceased feeling like a burden. As soon as I realized, I love playing guitar, I love punk music, I love rock music, I love metal music, and I love playing guitar, I wanted to listen to that music, I wanted to practice guitar, I wanted to write songs, I wanted to play shows, I wanted to be a famous rock star. So I was willing to spend 10 hours a day doing that, and it was just a joy. It was never a slog. It was never a burden. It wasn't, oh my God, I have to do guitar again today. No, I don't want to do it. It was something that I discovered on my own. I wasn't pressured into playing guitar. I wasn't pressured into music. It's something that naturally came to me, and I fell in love with it and wanted to do it with every waking moment. So that was the start where I realized, okay, I can do this all day long. And it never felt like, I have a good work ethic. It was just, I love doing this. I'm going to do this. There was no other option. And what's the next logical point once you pick up an instrument? You find a bunch of other people in your school that play instruments as well, and you start a band. And what do bands do? They play concerts. They play shows. But when you start that band, you don't get emailed a bunch of shows and say, here you go, great job on starting a band. You can play concerts now. That's not how it works. In order to get on shows, you need to prove that you have an audience. You need an audience because that's why promoters put you on a show. It's a business. So what I had to do when we first started out, because we didn't have an audience, I had to hound churches. I hounded restaurants. I hounded community centers, YMCAs, fairs. Wherever a band could possibly play a show, I would hound them and try to get on a show. But that wasn't the end of it, because I know a lot of bands, I see a lot of bands, they get on shows and they just rely on posting on social media and say, come out to a show. No, that's not how we did it. And it's not because it was around 2006, 2007 that we were coming up. We had MySpace, we had LiveJournal, we had Friendster, we had Pure Volume, we had all of those. You didn't just do that. When you get on a show, you get a flyer from the venue, you get a flyer from the promoter. If they don't have one, you make one yourself, you go to Kinko's, rest in peace, you print up hundreds or thousands of flyers, and what are you doing on the nights that you aren't practicing or before practice? You go to every single show that you can and flyer the lines. That's what we did. We would go to every single show and flyer. Not only does this introduce people in the lines to your band, but the promoters start to recognize you. And once they recognize you, oh my gosh, these people are at every single show flyering for their other concerts. We want somebody doing that for our shows. So they realize that you are willing to put in the work, and they put you on shows. But we didn't just stick to flyering concerts. Like I mentioned 1 or 2 episodes ago, we would burn a bunch of CDs with 2 or 3 songs on them in the little CD envelope, put a flyer, and go to malls. We would go to the local university and hand out CDs with the flyers in them to try to expand our audience. Through all this work, it never seemed like work. It was always fun for us. But through this, work ethic, we got known by the promoters. We got on bigger and bigger shows. Our first show was at a church because our bass player went to that church. Our second show was at a Chinese food restaurant. We played at that Chinese food restaurant for about 1.5 years. Johnny, if you ever see this, thank you. There's never too much rock and roll, Johnny. Never. Johnny was one of the funniest guys. I love that man. I would call him up and say, "Hey, Johnny, do you have any shows? Is there any opening slots on a show?" Because they had a tiny stage and they would bring in punk bands. And he says, "No, there's too much rock and roll tonight. There's too much rock and roll." And I love that man because he allowed us to play at his Chinese food restaurants. And right next door was an internet cafe. That's the first time I had boba tea. I'm getting off topic. First show, church. Second show, it was at a Chinese food restaurant. The last show I ever played, different band, but same work ethic, going to every show to flyer. Last show ever played was opening for Bring Me the Horizon. They weren't the world's biggest rock band back then, but Bring Me the Horizon, 4 Years Strong, one of my all-time favorites. Thursday, my favorite in high school, a band that I swore I would play a show with once. We played with them, and the other, Pierce the Veil. Quite a way to end. None of that was handed to us. That was all done because we loved playing instruments, we loved writing music, we loved playing concerts. And in order to do that, you needed to go to concerts and hand out flyers. You needed to do everything in your power to ensure that you expanded your reach, to ensure that as many people were going to come to your show as possible. Because when you realize that everything is transactional, everything is a business transaction, including in art, you may think, oh, my music is pure. What I do is just pure art, and I don't care about the money. That's fine. If you want to function that way, more power to you. But once you realize these promoters are not doing it out of the love of art, maybe they do love art, but it's a business for them. You need to prove to them why they should have you on their show. And that is how we accomplish that, through brute force. I have said this many a time. I have never accomplished anything from inherent skill. It is all through bashing my head against the wall over and over and over again until information gets in there or until I accomplish what I set out to do. Why am I telling you all this? By coming up in the punk and hardcore and metal scene, I learned that very quickly. I learned, oh, these other bands are going to every show and flyering, and I don't think they're as good as us, but they are playing massive shows. I guess we need to go to every concert and flyer and promote and be businessmen about it. We need to understand how all of this functions. And it may sound crass, but that is how I view YouTube and podcasts. I have a blast doing it, but I would never expect anybody to watch what I am doing or listen to what I'm doing just because I love doing it. I expect people to watch or listen because they see value in what it is. I am trying to offer them something that they enjoy, that they are willing to spend an hour of time with me listening to. That is an honor that anybody would spend any amount of their day listening to what I have to say. Nobody around me does. People at work don't. So the fact that you are choosing to spend your time doing that is an honor. And that is why I do so much work. So once you understand that nobody is going to help you out, nobody is going to do the work for you, you have no other option but to start working. Get to work. And once you've done that work and started to create that content, you need to understand, just because this is not Field of Dreams, this is not a build it and they will come kind of situation. Just because you make a video that you like, just because you make a podcast that you like, does not mean that people are going to or should watch or listen to it. You need to make sure that there is justification for somebody to watch and listen to it, just like with the band. We would try to put on the craziest shows. We would dress in goofy princess outfits while playing metal music while our singer hangs from rafters and we put holes in the wall. We would do the craziest stuff that we could think of to make it entertaining. We tried to write great music also, and maybe it was a bit gimmicky, but we tried to play really well. And we evolved out of doing goofy stuff like that. We did one show. We went to Walmart the night before and we bought white t-shirts, red clip-on ties, and our gimmick was we were doing a My Chemical Romance show. And that's the show that I slipped on some water on the floor. Thanks, Cree. Appreciate that. And I snapped the headstock off of my Gibson Les Paul Studio. So what did I do? I smashed the guitar. And then I may or may not have just laid in the snow outside, just been depressed. Maybe a tier or two fell because I didn't have $1,000 to buy a new guitar. That sucked. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, giving people justification or giving people a reason to watch and listen to you. Make your videos and podcasts extremely valuable. If you want a company to send something to you, you sure as heck better have an understanding of why they would. Why would a company give you a portion of their limited budget? Because that equipment doesn't fall out of the equipment tree. They had to make it. Making it cost money. So why are they going to spend their money to build the product and send it to you if they get nothing in return? I understood that from day one because I came up in this punk and metal and hardcore scene, where if you wanted anything done, you had to do it yourself. If you wanted to get on a show, you had to offer value. If I wanted a company to send me something to review, I sure as heck better frame it in a, here is how you are going to benefit from allowing me to cover this product. Luckily, I've had to stop doing that because I hate doing that. I'm trying to get away from it, but that's my answer. I came up playing in punk, metal, hardcore scenes. Nobody did anything for you. It was a DIY mentality. If you wanted anything done, if you wanted to record, if you wanted to get on shows, you had to save up, you had to put in the legwork, you had to put in the hours, and it was a joy to do because you loved playing music. You loved playing shows. I do this because I love making podcasts. I love screaming into microphones. I love testing microphones. It is a joy for me to do. So I have this work ethic because I don't view it as work most of the time. Sometimes I do. And on those days, I'm sure you can tell because I don't seem to be having a good time. But most of the time, I do it because it's fun. Sure, you have to light a fire under your rear end sometimes when you don't feel like doing anything. But sometimes you can say, I'm going to take a week off. This is supposed to be fun for me. It's not fun right now. I'm not going to do it. I hope that was a sufficient answer. I probably rambled on way too long, shared too much information, but there you go.